Glossy, luxurious, cafe quality milk with the press of a button. The NanoFoamer Pro is insane, and we even got a professional barista to put it through its paces. But there's just one deeply infuriating thing that's holding it back from supreme greatness. I'm a sucker for innovation and is why I backed the OG NanoFoamer on Kickstarter back in 2020. Dominic, the founder, actually invented a brand new product, and we don't hear that word very often. The V1 was far from perfect. V2 and lithium then ironed out most of the issues, but one consistent complaint we've heard that is yet to be addressed is the learning curve. All the NanoFoamers up until now required some amount of skill, but the Pro promises to eliminate all that with hands-free milk texturing. Now these are some big claims, so what do you say we put them to the test, ARAMSE style? And like I said, we even got a professional barista to put it through its paces, so be sure to stick around for that. Before we get started, we paid for this product on Kickstarter, but I did request early shipping if possible, and I've now somehow ended up with 2 units. Anyway, as always, this will be an in-depth and brutally honest review. A massive thanks to Benki Brewing Tools as always. If you're looking to buy some coffee gear, then check the link in the description below to get 5% off anything you purchase over 2,000 rupees. It also helps support the channel. Okay, cool, let's go. I am so pumped for this one. Okay, starting with aesthetics, if milk pitchers were people, then the NanoFoamer Pro could be in the NBA. Yeah, it's a tall ass pitcher. I mean, it's literally their flow tip jug stretched on the y-axis. Now, pitchers come in all shapes and sizes, but I don't think you see tall and skinny ones like this too often, and I can't quite decide how I feel about it. Overall though, the design still remains clean and minimal, staying true to the brand name, and the color, finish, and slick display definitely give it a very polished look. Let's see how it feels to interact with. So when it comes to build quality, the NanoFoamer Pro ranges from excellent all the way to worrisome. Starting with the pros, the main device seems very well built. It's hefty and largely metal with a really nice textured finish. The bottom is pretty standard and what you'd find on most electric kettles. The handle feels solid, I really like the display, and the inside has a very nice finish to it. Now, this is a non-stick coating and I'm generally not a huge fan, but we'll chat about that when we look at the UX. Okay, we're off to a good start. Now, moving away from the main body for a second, you have these 3 weird looking things called flow controllers. They are fascinating and you'll see why when I show you what they do. They're made of silicone and the quality seems very good. Just don't lose them. Next, we have the base. And here, we take a bit of a dive in terms of quality. It feels very cheap compared to everything else and is super light, but luckily, it looks fine and there aren't any controls on it, so you never really have to interact with it once it's connected. So for that reason, I'm going to say it doesn't really bother me and I'm sure it helped bring the price down, which is great. And lastly, we have the lid, which includes the whole shaft and impeller assembly. Now, the lid per se is clear plastic with a seal and is honestly fine in terms of build, but it's pretty annoying to use and you'll see why very soon. Okay, coming back to build quality, the lid is fine, but the impeller, while insanely exciting from a functionality standpoint, is quite concerning in terms of longevity. Funnily, the fragility of the impeller and the screen has been our main concern with all of the NanoFoamers. While the Pro is a step up, you still have this very unsatisfying way in which the screen locks onto the impeller. It's a weak click that just doesn't feel secure and is likely going to get worse over time. I've had this fall off a couple of times, but that could be user error. Now, luckily you can get spares and I highly recommend keeping an extra screen and impeller around. Okay, now before we put this thing through its paces, let's first look at how it works. All of the electronics are housed below, much like a regular kettle. You have, of course, a heating element over on one side, but the fascinating stuff is all going on the other side. If you're wondering how this impeller spins, then you may have noticed that the screen has packed on a few pounds. The reason is it now houses a series of very powerful magnets, and sneakily hidden right below the milk chamber floor is a motor that spins a disc also fitted with powerful magnets. Then, using the magic of opposing polarities, they've managed to spin this thing at insane speeds north of 8,000 RPM. Super cool stuff. You may have also noticed that the shaft has a little bit of play to it, and this is intentional to allow for more precise positioning and alignment with the motor below. Now, a quick hack that I got from Dominic himself is to loosen the shaft screw a tad so that it's just about finger tight to get even finer microfoam. Now, just remember that it's reverse threaded or you'll end up breaking it like this idiot did by forcing it in the wrong direction. Okay, moving on, this neat little touchscreen allows you to select from one of 6 programs. Yeah, the last one is for cold foam and just turns the heating off. These are essentially pre-programmed settings that vary the RPM based on a combination of time and temperature in order to get different levels of foam. Fascinating, right? Now hang on a second, because there's one last piece to the puzzle that helps bring this whole system together and magically creates silky microfoam at the press of a button. You remember those 3 weird silicone strips? They are called flow controllers, and as the name suggests, their sole job is to act like a dam of sorts and control the size of the vortex to prevent over-aeration. Look closely and you'll notice that they reduce in thickness going from black to blue to green. The black one slows down the vortex the most and is perfect for liquids that foam very readily, like dairy milk. For alt milks, you may need to go to the blue or even the green to get enough air in to texture properly. Just snap one onto the wall like so, and you're good to go. So with the NanoFoamer Pro, you basically have 3 variables that you can tweak to get the best results for a given milk or alt milk. Once you do that, then you're pretty much in fully automatic mode. The first one is volume of liquid. We found that in general, the lower the volume, the more foam you get, and keeping it around 2 to 4 segments below the max line gave us the most consistent results. Number 2, picking the right flow controller, and 3, selecting a program mode. So that's how it works, and using it is hilariously simple. Place the flow controller between these lines and push it down to the base, then pour in 100 to 220 ml of milk. Place the lid on, make sure it's sitting flush, tap the screen to select the program mode, and wait. It'll start with a gentle churn and heat, followed by an aeration phase, which you can hear because the speed really ramps up. The higher your program mode, the longer this phase is. Then the speed drops back down and we enter the final vortex and incorporation phase. When the milk hits 55 degrees Celsius, it'll beep and then display OK. You could stop here and pour your drink or wait a few seconds if you want it a little hotter. It would have been nice to have a timer here too. For someone like me who likes an in-between temperature, it would have been an easy way to figure out how long I should wait before turning the machine off. It will eventually turn itself off once it hits the 65-degree mark. It's insane how simple it is to use, and I also love how the graphics on the display show you exactly which phase of the texturing process you're in. Now before we look at the NanoFoamer Pro in action, I have to give a shout out to my friend Ashwin for letting us film at his cafe. If you ever find yourself in Mysore, then definitely check out Minimal Coffee, best cafe in town. Okay, so testing performance was super fun because we did it a little differently this time. We got our favorite barista Mahesh to pour some oat and dairy milk drinks using the NanoFoamer Pro, and this was the first time he's ever used it. So let's see how it all went down. Starting with dairy milk, we used 150 ml with the black flow controller at a setting of 2, and here's what happened. Attempt 1 was a fail because we ended up waiting too long, and here's a quick reminder if you're new to steaming milk, act quickly because the microfoam will separate and form a thick layer on top and you won't be able to pour any latte art. With attempt number 2, however, we have a legit 5-stack tulip and you can see how beautifully the milk is gliding. Both drinks tasted amazing, by the way. Next up, we have oat milk, and here we first tried the blue flow controller with a setting of 1, which didn't produce nearly enough foam. We then dialed it up to 2 and we were back in business. And just for fun, here's a hot chocolate with a beautiful swan. This drink was just as tasty as these B-roll shots. I know, because I downed it right after the shoot. Okay, so Mahesh is capable of way more baller latte art, but considering the following: number 1, this is the first time he's ever used the product. 2, the beans were fresh and were producing a ton of crema. 3, having to deal with me messing up his flow and making him wait and position himself perfectly for the camera. And 4, the fact that we shot all of this in under an hour. I think this is amazing and a pretty legit demonstration of this product doing exactly what it claims to. I mean, once we found the right combo of the 3 variables, which didn't take very long at all, we literally pressed the button and got this. Nuts. The texture is excellent and very similar to the previous versions of the NanoFoamer, if not a tad better, and a lot more consistent. To my palate, it's a tad heavier and creamier when compared to steam milk, which is lighter and airier. Okay, what about temperature? Obviously, we had to test that too. Now, before you start bashing me in the comments, I'm aware that the top surface of foam is going to be quite a bit cooler than the milk below, but using an infrared thermometer was a really easy way to test the variance between several passes, both at the OK beep and at the auto shut-off point. The results were very good. The readings were generally within a degree or 2 of each other, and the difference between the high and low points hovered around the 10-degree mark. We then compared the surface temperature to the actual liquid temperature below using a regular digital thermometer and found around a 10-degree difference, indicating that the NanoFoamer Pro is indeed working roughly within the 55 to 65 degrees Celsius range as advertised. Okay, so we've established that the NanoFoamer Pro works. I mean, it does a pretty freaking incredible job if you ask me, and I've been using it every day for over a month now. But it can be a pain in the ass sometimes, and I think we need to talk about that. Okay, remember how I said I don't really like the lid? Yeah, so this thing just never feels like it's on quite right. And that's very, very frustrating because there's no click or any other feedback to know that it's seated correctly. Okay, ordinarily this wouldn't be that big of an issue, but here it's absolutely crucial to have the lid on correctly so that the impeller is in the right position to get the best microfoam. So I really wish the next version of this product has a lid that fits better and there's no guesswork involved. Alright, so what is this big con that I've been going on about? The NanoFoamer's Achilles heel, if you will? Well, you probably guessed it by now, it's cleanup. I do have an idea for the NanoFoamer Pro version 2 that will sort all of these issues out, but I'll get to that. Now, let me preface this by saying that of all of the household chores that exist, doing the dishes is by far my least favorite. And by least favorite, I mean I downright loathe it. So you may not feel as strongly about this as I do. So on the NanoFoamer, I find cleanup to be deeply frustrating for two reasons. Firstly, dealing with scorched milk, which is the absolute worst. On the Pro, scorching happens quick and thick in spite of the lower milk temperatures because you have a small heating element that gets very hot around this section of the base. So my advice, and I know you don't want to hear this, is to clean after every use. If you're making 2 drinks, then you could do back-to-back texturing without cleanup, but the white crust turns brown, messes with the taste of the milk, and cleaning gets even harder. Now, it does have a non-stick coating to make life a bit easier, but it still takes a fair amount of effort to get the deposits off. Use a soft, soapy cloth to get the gunk out, have the inner chamber cool down, and then texture the next drink. Good workflow can make a world of a difference. I've noticed that the quicker you deal with it, the easier it is. Much like a disagreement with a partner. But it's so tempting to just put it off. Speaking of good workflow, here's another useful tip. Holding the impeller under a forceful stream of water for a few seconds like this will help you avoid any clogging issues. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, dude, relax. You're being a tad dramatic. I mean, this is just milk being milk, right? Yes. In isolation, this is not such a big deal. So let me draw your attention to Exhibit B. The reason that this need to clean up frequently is exponentially more frustrating is because you're having to wash something that houses electronics. So not only are you having to wash often, you also need to be really careful when you're doing it, which makes an already delightful task slower and more difficult to do. So yeah, I think my rant is justified, but we just saw this thing perform magic right in front of our eyes. So not even these cleaning woes can stop me from recommending it. Now, before I reveal my genius plan for the NanoFoamer Pro version 2, a quick note about coatings. These wear off over time, no matter how careful you are, and the need to constantly rub milk residue out doesn't help. Luckily, I can keep using it without it trying to kill me. Well, hopefully. Yeah, so several Kickstarter backers pushed back on the use of Teflon, so Subminimal switched to a Swiss company called ILAG to use their ILAFLON Select SP500 with Swiss Shield coating. Really rolls right off the tongue. This is a supposedly safe silicone polyester coating without any of the deadly abbreviations. No PTFE, PFOA, PFOS, BPA, HIV, HPV. Oh wait, sorry, wrong list. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, you ready? Here's what I propose for the Pro version 2. I'm not sure how expensive or practical it'll be to execute, but I will patent it and sue Subminimal once they implement it to fund my retirement. If you didn't get that joke, then you're not following coffee news closely enough. Okay, back to the idea. If this inner milk chamber could somehow be removable, it would be game-changing from a workflow standpoint, in my opinion. You can then be way more frivolous with the cleaning. You could buy multiple inner chambers so you don't have to wash after every pass, and they can be made dishwasher safe. Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, am I the only idiot excited about this hypothetical utopian milk texturing experience on a budget? Oh, and I'm not done. They could then maybe launch a slightly more expensive version called the NanoFoamer Max, which has Bluetooth and allows you to create your own precise program modes, the new era of milk texture profiling. But why stop there? NanoFoamer Ultra with AI. Okay, I'll stop. But that was a lot of information, so to summarize, The UX on the NanoFoamer Pro is pretty damn good, except for the cleanup and faffing with the lid. It works exactly as advertised, and once you've found your sweet spot of those 3 variables that we spoke about, then it's like magic, and I love it. So let's look at the price and who this product is for before we wrap this one up. Okay, I absolutely love what this thing does and how it does it. It's such a smart and creative solution to a problem that hasn't really been solved up until now, at least at this price point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd have to spend thousands of dollars on something like the Latte Art Factory or one of the Perfect Mousse machines to get cafe quality microfoam without any skill whatsoever. And Dominique has somehow managed to do it at a fraction of the price. So at $160 MRP, a little under $120 on pre-order, and rupees 14,000 in India, I think the price is more than justified. But who's the NanoFoamer Pro for? Well, it's pretty simple really. It's for anyone who wants beautifully textured milk with the least amount of effort without breaking the bank. If that's you and you're willing to suck it up and tolerate the cleanup, then you, my friend, are going to be very happy indeed. But more specifically, this would be super appealing to 1. Folks with manual lever machines like the Flare that don't have milk steaming capabilities. 2. This would be great with Sophie 72 or the Mocha Pot to level up your milky drinks. And 3. Those of you who have entry-level machines with subpar steaming capabilities. If, however, you're someone who is willing to put in the work to learn a new skill and don't mind the additional step of having to heat milk separately, then I cannot recommend the NanoFoamer Lithium highly enough because you'll get very similar results at less than half the price. So that's the NanoFoamer Pro. I hope you found this review helpful, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this machine in the comments below. If you're someone who prefers steaming your milk, then you may want to check out a review of the Bellman Stovetop Steamer. But now, I'm all out of steam, but thank you so much for watching, and brew ARAMSE.